Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be looking at, I believe, the pronunciations of these names I'm going to wreck every time, but I believe it's Hengyen, something like that, Hengyen. I'm gonna wreck it every time, so I'm going to probably just call him Hengyen or something like this, so I do apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But this is what he looks like as a 5-star. He does become a 6-star character, and he does become another S-class character. We're going to check out what he looks like as a 6-star, and his look changes massively. He goes into that military outfit, you know, from the 5-star, which is he's just wearing a hat. He's just trying to, you know, go for a hunt or something like that. He's just going for a walk in the forest, and then he turns into some military leader, I guess. But this is what he looks like as a 6-star, and he has 2,503 attack, 2,035 defense, and 2,544 HP. So very low attack stat for a 6-star character with 30 veteran rings. Obviously, this is lower than Romanov, who has very low attack stat for a 6-star Gen 2. This is a Gen 2 6-star, but we're going to look at the S-class in a moment. Trait is fast, roll is damage. And the reason the roll is damage is because it's a lot of bleed. It seems to be a lot of these characters are having bleed at the moment. The rush is called Blood-Stained Slashes. It is a 76 AP cost rush, so a normal AP cost rush. And it deals 2 attacks of 150% damage, which is 300% total, and 600 bleed damage for 5 turns to one enemy. So obviously that's 3,000 damage. That enemy gets stunned for 3 turns. So unless you resist or you've got anti-stun, you're going to take 1,800 damage without being able to reply. You're going to rely on healers potentially being on that team, so on and so forth. That can obviously be lacerated, so it'll be a lot worse in that case. Now, as that attack is 2 separate attacks, everything works with that. Anything where it's on attack with the weapon, it will work. This guy does have a special weapon, but also anything on defense that he attacks obviously can stun him, can impair him, so on and so forth. When it comes to the active skill, it is crit and AP up. It has an initial cooldown of 2 and cooldown of 4 turns. This character and one teammate get 90 crit for 4 turns. This character gains 35% AP, so kind of the usual what we see within free-to-play characters, at least, with 35% AP. Generally speaking, on promo characters, you're looking at 50% AP, so they don't lose too much in terms of AP. He would be losing out on AP if he used this active otherwise. I'm not really a big fan of the active skill personally. I would have preferred there being a bit of control on there, especially as he has got bleed on his rush. I would have preferred there being a little bit of control on there. Just because on bleed teams, that's what you're kind of looking for. You're looking for bleed and or control, and he is only going to be bringing bleed so far and sort of self-crit buff, which isn't that amazing. Now, he has got the specialist skill Headhunter, and as it says, if this character performs a critical hit on an enemy, the enemy gets crosshairs for 3 turns. This is a brand new specialist skill. Obviously, it is an enhanced version of Decapitate. Decapitate has its massive caveats in that you have to lean a character that has it extremely heavily towards damage. So there is an obvious weakness on that character in that they can be annihilated themselves. Whereas with a character with Headhunter, this guy can be made massively defensive, and the fact that crosshairs works for 3 turns, it doesn't matter who gets the kill. You know, that is really, really powerful compared to the Decapitate. He could get a crit, then get killed that turn, and that character that he got the crit on initially could still be killed 1 or 2 turns later. I do think they thought that bringing in Headhunter would be a weaker version of decap, but it's definitely a stronger version in my mind. I'd 100% prefer Headhunter over a decap, but maybe that's just me. Now, when we look at the weapon, it's 30 crit base, so obviously it's going to work with that specialist skill. It also works with his rush because you can crit on those 2 separate attacks. A medium bonus to AP when attacking, you're most likely going to obviously upgrade that to a huge bonus. And then it's going to be one of the first fast characters, maybe the first fast character to have double attack. It isn't the enhanced double attack that we've seen on other characters before. It is just the normal armory craft, but it will be a better chance to make a second attack with 150% attack. Now that will work on his rush as well. So effectively he could hit his rush 4 times. Now the double attack isn't based off of his crit. It will just randomly happen, sort of like stun on attack, that sort of thing. But that can crit as well, so those 2 separate double attacks can hit critical hits. So that's Hengyen as a 6-star character. This is what he is like as an S-class character. He has 4,305 attack, 3,624 defense, and 4,398 HP. So the usual overall S-class stats of 12,000 with 30 veteran rings. This is normal. Its trait and roll remain the same. Now everything else gets boosted just that little bit. His rush is now called Bloodstained Blade. It has a 76 AP cost still, but now is dealing 2 attacks of 250% instead of 150%, so a little bit more damage. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more damage overall because his attack stat is so much higher. Now, it does deal it to only one enemy with that attack, but that enemy and one other enemy now get 1,000 bleed for 5 turns. So it went from 3,000 bleed damage to 1 to now 5,000 bleed damage to 2, and those 2 enemies also get stunned for the 3 turns that initially one enemy was. So it's been massively expanded, and obviously 5,000 bleed is huge, and just like I said before, it can be lacerated. It's like they're not realizing this can get doubled every turn. After one double, 2,000, after the next is 3, so that's 6,000 damage after 3 turns, which is huge. Obviously you're going to have to run 2 lacerators if you wanted to get that on both the characters, but that's a huge amount of bleed damage, and he only has to hit a crit on one of those characters once, and they're going to be decapitated. They cannot be revived because of crosshairs. Now the active skill gets boosted as well, and it has an initial cooldown of 1, cooldown of 3, so he can do this turn 1. This character and one teammate get 90 crit for 4 turns. This character gains 60% AP. So now we're seeing the sort of promo AP gain that we generally see on, like I said, promo characters versus free-to-play characters. This means he can use it on an attack or defense team and not lose a turn and get enough AP gain so that he would normally get on a basic attack. I still think the 90 crit is not that big a deal, but it will sort of guarantee the specialist skill hitting a critical attack, and that way obviously crosshairs will be on that enemy. Now his weapon has also been buffed. It remains at 30 crit and a medium bonus to AP when attacking, but his third stop now becomes when attacking a 50% chance to make a second attack with 150% attack. Now the original 6-star version is a better chance, which I think most people kind of assumes that it's around about 30 to 35%. It's definitely going to be worse than what this is, so it's definitely lower than 50%. But it hasn't been buffed in terms of the amount of damage that it's going to give out. That still remains at 150% versus other weapons that have had 200% in the past. So obviously the S class I think is really strong. I do think, like I said before, Headhunter is much stronger than Decapitate. I don't think they realize this because it's being pushed so heavily like it's not a big thing. I definitely prefer Crosshairs. I think Crosshairs would be great for an actual 6-star. So if you could get Hengyen just by himself as a 6-star, with a limited amount of collectibles, if he did become semi-free to play like these other S-class characters have become, I think he'd actually be a worthwhile pickup just as a 6-star, not even as an S-class. S-class is great, but just because of the specialist skill, you can have other hard hitters with him. For instance, you could run him on a Michelle team and have Krista on that Michelle team as well. He hits the crit, Krista hits the rush, and that's going to be a decap, 100%. So obviously, Crosshairs is the best part about this character in my opinion. I think he's actually a pretty nice character. He's obviously balanced a bit more towards the defensive stats. This seems to be an ongoing thing that they're trying to push, moving away from more attacking damage dealers, which is kind of strange. And he'll also work well with last season's character Shiva, obviously with the bleed. Huge amounts of laceration can be had. Even as a 6-star when he was doing 600 bleed for 5 turns, that's still a huge amount of bleed. The only letdown for me, like I said before, is that active skill. I personally would have preferred a little bit of control, even if it was just confuse for 2 turns or taunt for 2 turns or something like this, just to stop something happening on a character for 2 turns. So worth noting that while this character is categorized as a damage dealer within his role, I think he will have a lot of longevity. Something I've talked about with 5-star characters and 6-star characters in terms of which ones will survive the next upgrade. This is a character that effectively would if there ever was another one in the future, because a lot of his power comes from his specialist skill. A lot of his power comes from bleed, when these things do scale quite well, especially like I said before with Lacerator, and we don't know what else comes out in the future. Something could come out that could heavily counter this, which is most likely going to happen. Bleed's been everywhere so far, so I think this character is pretty good. I am probably going to prioritize this character's collectibles if I ever get the chance to get them, just because, like I said, his 6-star alone will be extremely useful for pretty much any attack team, whether you've got a bleed team or a heavy hitting Michelle team that you currently are using, and eventually he will be a good S-class character if you get enough collectibles. He is going to be on the promo wheel, of course, and I think if they're going to continue what they've done with Raulito, if you do 100 pulls, you're guaranteed to get him as a 5-star ascendable. You could get a second one in those 100 pulls as well, and you're going to get a bunch of collectibles, so you could potentially get enough for an S-class all around. This is most likely something I'm going to aim to do in the future in terms of saving my coins for 100 pulls and try and go for a good guarantee. Personally, I'm all about the guarantees. But do tell me what you think about Hengyen, whose name I am most likely butchering every time I say it. That is the end of my video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.